Hello there. I'm going to share with you one of my all-time favourite recipes, which is Korean beef bulgogi. As those of you who have watched me before will know that I've been very deeply influenced by the Korean culture and spirituality. And one of the first practices I did explore was this particular dish. So you start off with some diced beef. It's always better to avoid any meat from a supermarket because it's usually full of as much water as they can put into the beef, plus God knows what else. So much better to get it from a local butcher if you can, which is what I do. So the first thing I did with this beef is I put it in the freezer for about 45 minutes. And then what I do is I cut it up into thin slices, supposedly 6mm thick. Well, never mind about that. The important thing is to cut it into thin slices. So as I've mentioned before, the Koreans regard this to be a sovereign remedy, the beef that is, for any malady, particularly any malady involving any kind of a weakness. It's regarding to be a strengthening food. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a whole bunch of plants. They're going to join the party, and what they're going to do is they're going to act in a very transforming way on the beef to make the very best of all nutrition. So if you've not seen me before, I went to India in October for the second time, November 2024 for the second time that year, and that's when I was initiated into my journey with what is now called the Lion Diet, and Michaela Peterson uses that name for it, and it's all about principal food. So when I did my health counsellor's training a long time ago, the principal food we chose to adopt was brown rice. And looking back, to be honest, really good for a monk, but not particularly good as a principal food otherwise. So October I changed my principal food into beef, and it's been so ever since. So what we will do is we will add a series of plants to this beef, and one of the reasons for that will be to make the nutrients in the beef as available as possible we can to your digestive system. That's the whole point. So beef has the properties of what I would call a true reset diet, because most people are deficient in one or more nutrients as a result of eating mainstream nutrition. Mainstream nutrition is one of the most damaging things people can do, most especially when we go into the realms of takeaways and such like, where the cheapest possible ingredients are always used, because the primary motive behind operating a takeaway is to make as much money as possible. So one of the biggest steps you can take for your health is to eschew that practice of going to takeaways and cook your own. The huge advantage about cooking your own is you control what goes into the food far more than if you are in the hands of someone who's working for a minimum wage far too many hours and super stressed and exhausted most of the time. You can imagine what that's going to do to the quality of the food, because it's so much more than just the science, it's also spirituality. It's the attitude of mind of the person who's cooking. So I am so grateful to the Spirit of the Cow for providing me and those who share this food with me for this absolutely top quality nutrition, which means that whatever levels of any nutrients I'm deficient in, they will be topped up. That's my experience and the experience of those that have been choosing to operate in this way. So this is probably the most time-consuming part of the process. So I'll explain. What I'll do is I'll have the beef and all the selected plants, and I will then close the bag with a special bag tie, and I will basically manipulate the bag so that I'm spreading all the plant ingredients and allowing them to mix with the beef. When I've done all that, I'll put it in the fridge for up to 8 hours. And if I'm not going to use it that day, from there it will go into the freezer. But before I put anything in the freezer, I would actually decant it out of this plastic bag into tubs of the appropriate size for the material I'm putting away in the freezer. So it does freeze incredibly well. So one of the things I do now as part of my practice, I do Korean bows to the spirit of the cow. And because it's something I only thought of recently, when I felt like, oh my goodness me, why haven't you been thanking a cow every single day before preparing your food? I thought, right, I'll do 27 Korean bows every time from now on, just to catch up with what I've missed. So a Korean bow is a way of putting yourself into a situation where you are vulnerable and you are expressing great gratitude. And the great gratitude I have is that the spirit of the beef has become my greatest spiritual teacher, which is very shocking and surprising. I wasn't expecting that at all. And I will at another point make a film to go in to explain how the spirit of the cow has become one of my great spiritual teachers. I'm very fortunate about going to such a good butcher. And I do like to watch the guy prepare what he does for me. He's very mindful and completely instead of present when he's doing this. So there we are. So we have the beef in the bag. So to that I'm going to add 80 millilitres of tamari soya sauce, 40 millilitres of maple syrup, or rice syrup, or barley malt syrup, or coconut blossom nectar, or coconut sugar, and then 40 millilitres of organic sesame oil. And then 4 cloves of garlic. Now everyone's an individual, so my personal preference is to cut the garlic not very fine, but actually quite rough cut garlic. I find this is the most delicious way of doing garlic for me personally, because I like having the overall blend of the garlic from the small pieces and the big lumps with a big blast every now and again. My predilection. Right, so in that goes 4 cloves of rough cut garlic. I started off with 1 kilo of the diced beef, in case you're wondering how much I started with. So this is enough to make 4 good portions. Now the recipe says 18 grams of dried chili flakes. I find that 10 grams works better for me, because I'm not a full Korean. If I was a full Korean, I'd have the full 18 grams, maybe even a bit more, maybe 20. So here's a tip. I add turmeric because it's one of nature's wonderful anti-inflammatories, anti-pain medication. So I'm going to grate the turmeric first. I've got 18 grams of turmeric and I've got 24 grams of ginger. If you can't get hold of the fresh ingredients, you can use the dry powders. but obviously if you get hold of the fresh ingredients, so much the better. So my tip is, when you finish grating the turmeric, which you do first, you then grate with the ginger afterwards. And what that does, it takes away about 90% of the staining which is produced by the turmeric, which means it's a lot easier to wash your grater at the end of the process. And because effectively what I'm doing is I'm marinating the beef in this mixture, I don't mind if there's a little bit of scraggy stuff like that, I'll put that in as well. I do need to fry it back and get all the juices and the spirit of the ginger out. So ginger is a very special plant. It's called tridoshik in the Ayurvedic system, which means it is most suitable for all types of human. It's particularly helpful. So adding the tamari to the beef definitely does start to help the pre-digestive processes, which means you're going to get even more nutrients out of your beef than if you didn't do that. I'm not exactly sure why the sweetener is added, and I find maple syrup to be my absolute favourite. I use so little maple syrup that I'm quite happy to put 48 millilitres into this dish. So 1 kilo will give me 4 dishes, and that's 4 generous dishes as well. So I've now got all this lot, that can now go in as well. I found this sort of activity is very good for creating and maintaining presence. Which means I've only got one ingredient left. This is a Korean magical ingredient. It's a pear. So the thing about a pear contains fruit acids. And the fruit acids in the pear, when combined with the beef, start to digest. They start to pre-digest the proteins of the muscle fibres of the beef, which is going to make all the nutrients even more available to the one who eats it. The recipe actually says half a pear. Well, I say a whole pear. Personal preference. Right. So I'm going to grate this on the coarse side. And if you haven't grated a pear before, what happens is it comes up very, very mushy, which is what you want. Make all those fruit acids very available to the contents of the plastic bag. And unlike an apple where you get quite a lot left when you're grating with a pear, almost the entire thing seems to melt into the grater. So there it is, let's get that in as well. Last scraps out of the grater. Now, I've forgotten the very, very last ingredient, which is the black pepper. That goes in because it potentizes the anti-inflammatory properties of the turmeric by up to 2000%. So that's certainly something I'm going to do. At this point my hands are incredibly messy. Let's just clean them off. and there's going to be some drops of sesame oil can be added. So it's now, I think this is one of the really nice fun sensory parts, because you literally, I forgot to get my clip, so I'm just holding it in my hand at the moment. But basically this is what you do, you give it a really good squeeze, and as you squeeze the bag, you mix the ingredients together, and then it's going to go into the fridge for between 6 and 8 hours, and 3 or 4 times during that time I'll go back to the fridge, I'll get the bag out and I'll do this for maybe half a minute, and I'll go and put it back in the fridge, go back again. So I've got a part of my day which is involving some sitting. It's a really great opportunity. I can get up and give my hands and my arms a bit of a workout by giving the bag a really good squeeze. And that is now ready to go in the fridge. So the thing is, you've done 95% of all the work to make your beef bulgogi by doing this. And the only 5% is going to be film number 2, where I get my frying pan out, sesame oil in the frying pan, and I fry each one of these pieces up in a very particular way. So that's the end of part 1, and part 2 will come another time. All the love to you.